It's another fine day at Camp Dynasty. I am Counselor Austin, joined by Counselor Collin, and it is the final rankings series for the 2023 season, draft season, the 2023 campers. We are on the final stretch. Like I said last week, we did a little bit of a reaction to the draft, oriented our thoughts, got our opinions sorted out, and now it is time to run through each position group over the next 5 weeks, starting, Collin, with the quarterbacks this week.
Yeah, the quarterbacks, they get a little sidelined for us a lot of the times because we look at it through a one quarterback focus. But here's their time to fully shine. And I mean, you get a lot of quarterback takes as it is from the major media outlets where you don't have to come to a place like this to hear quarterback thoughts, but I think we're going to make this pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be fun because, like you said, we have always approached this with a one quarterback sort of a lens here. And we didn't even talk about the quarterbacks at all last episode. And that was very intentional because we wanted to save it for this episode where we will go all in on the quarterbacks. I mean, you can go back if you didn't catch it and listen to our rankings 2.0 on quarterbacks. That's where we broke them down a lot as prospects, what they brought to the table, strengths and weaknesses, all of that stuff. We'll get into a little bit of that here, but this episode and the subsequent, running back, wide receiver, all of that, it's going to be a lot more about that, but also the team fit, because that is the new information that we have. We broke down some of these players as prospects along the way, but we didn't have any idea what the situation was. What scheme are they playing in? Where are they on the depth chart? So that's really what this is all about as we work toward our final big board, our final rankings for the 2023 season before we kind of, close up shop and switch to 2024.
and landing spot matters immensely for quarterbacks more than almost any other position, because you think about, I mean, you mentioned scheme, but you think about supporting cast, you think about coaching, all of that, where these quarterbacks can go to a place where they're going to be in purgatory, like say Sam Darnold to the Jets, and it's just, we'll never know if Sam Darnold would have been any good. Like he never really got a chance in New York. Not that I think that Sam Darnold's good, but just an example off the top of my head is like he goes there, they have bad coaching, they're turning over coach year after year. It happened with Baker too. Like he goes and he has a new coach, like his first 5 years of his career, and they never really figure anything out, and then all of a sudden he's on a new team every year. So that stands paramount with these guys, and we'll dig into how we felt about the landing spots each of these guys.
Definitely. And before we get into our number 5 quarterback, this is a top 5 this week. The running backs and wide receivers will definitely be an expanded view of the class, but for this episode, it'll just be a top 5. But also, we're going to add a little bit of a super flex spin on this just because it is quarterbacks, in a super flex league that is the premium position. So we will outline where we are taking these guys in a one quarterback, but we'll also talk about what it looks like from a super flex standpoint as well, just in case you found us as a super flex player.
Yeah, we're sorry if you came here as a superflex player and you're like,
it's rethink your life choices, but that's another story. Anyway, number 5 quarterback from the 2023 class, Collin.
My number 5 quarterback is Hendon Hooker. I mean, he got taken by the Lions, and I mean, it's a fine spot. Like, it's not a bad spot. It's not a great spot, but Hooker's wasn't really going to play this year anyway. We knew whoever was going to the Lions, if they drafted a quarterback, was going to probably sit for their first year behind Jared Goff, since Jared Goff had a good season last year and deserves another year at least as the starter. And Hooker, I mean, though he is the same age as Jared Goff, it'll be a little bit of an interesting dynamic to add another veteran onto that Lions roster.
You're still doing this, man. You're
I'm
still doing this.
No, but Hooker will be 25 when he's able to play his next football. He'll be 26 going into probably his first year, if he's starting next year, his first year starting, if they decide to move on from Jared Goff.
So here's the thing. He's 25 right now. He's 25 and change right now. So you're talking about a player here who will be 26 years old basically by the end of this NFL season. He's a January birthday. So not quite as old as some of the names you've thrown out, but definitely an older player.
He is an older player. But so the question becomes, if Jared Goff plays well, does Hooker see the field? And that's, I mean, probably not. But Jared Goff has proven who he is as a player, I'd say. And I don't expect him to keep playing as well as he is. So that is the only thing holding me back about Hooker. But I think he was my fifth best quarterback pre-draft. Not a ton has changed. But I mean, there's something with Hooker there, and I think a team will take a chance on him, and the Lions feel like that kind of team.
Yeah, I mean, this is a conversation that's very skewed towards Superflex, because you're talking about a player here that probably, in my eyes, won't be drafted in a one quarterback IDP league, which is what we're looking at it from. So you look at the top 48, I don't have him in mind. I don't see him slotting in there. He's a guy that, you pick up afterwards if you have a spot and just kind of see what happens here. But in Superflex, it is interesting because Jared Goff's dead money hit drops dramatically next season. So they've kind of set this up where Hooker, who's recovering from the ACL and does need some development. I mean, this was also my number 5 quarterback before the draft. And that's a pretty, he's on his own tier here. He's not on the same tier as my number 4. And that player's not on the same tier as my top 3. So it's a little bit further away, but next year, the dead hit for Jared Goff is only $5 million. They can throw him away next year easily. So depending on what they see with Hooker, what they are, what the plans are there, if the recovery goes well and they see some promising signs, the door is open. But I am also I'm not the one that's going to count Jared Goff out the quickest. I still do think that Jared Goff is a functional NFL quarterback, and that offense looked good last year under Ben Johnson. And I think, they've continued to invest in it. If Goff looks good this year, I mean, I don't really see why you would do that. So it's a big risk in terms of, if you're going to draft this player, I'm thinking Superflex. I mean, where do you think Hendon Hooker is going in a Superflex right now?
Oh man, that's a great question. I'm in a Superflex league, and I'm just trying to think. We only have a 3-round rookie draft, and I'm trying to think if he would get drafted. And I feel like for a team that needs a quarterback, well, because we do have a taxi squad, you would throw a third at him.
I think he's definitely going in the third in a Superflex league. I was hesitating to say, does he sneak into the second for some teams, but I don't think it makes sense. No. So yeah, a 3rd round pick in a Superflex league. It's a dart throw,
especially if you have Jared Goff. It's kind of like a handcuff almost.
Oh yeah. Quarterback handcuff. There it is.
It's like if you had a Rodgers and you're like, oh, is he gonna retire? You draft Jordan Love, and then you have the handcuff. It's kind of a similar situation where you get both guys, and then you're guaranteed a starting quarterback either way.
Right. So yeah, like I said, I mean, I don't mind Hooker as a player, as a prospect, but yeah, this is a firm tier below. So why don't we go up to the next tier and
Let's
talk
do
a
that.
little bit more about a player that does have some interesting upside potentially. I'm going to assume, Colin, we are in the same boat here, and we have Will Levis as number 4.
We are in the same boat.
So Will Levis, obviously, polarizing prospect. Lot of talk through the final stretch leading up to the NFL draft. A lot of smoke screen is what we learned. He was the smoke bomb in the quarterback discussion for NFL
Sure
teams. They
was.
were throwing the name out there like, oh, we're going to take him at 2. We're going to take him at 4. And it just never was the case. So Will Levis ends up with the Tennessee Titans, who traded up to the 33rd pick to select him. Great deal for the Cardinals, by the way. I didn't even realize the compensation on that trade. It was 41, 72, and a 24 third.
Ooh, that's really
So yeah, they got the quarterback premium with like they're moving up for
nice.
the quarterback, so they gave him a little extra something, and the Cardinals continued, their path of destruction on draft night, getting value trading down the board multiple times. But so yeah, I mean, Tennessee makes the move to bring him in. The spot makes sense. Honestly, I think in my final mock, I had Tennessee taking him at 11. So they come back at the top of the second and get Will Levis, a player, Colin, who has been compared to Ryan Tannehill, who is the incumbent there, and another player that, when you look at the contract, there are some outs here coming very, very quickly. There was some trade chatter with Tannehill. It seems like he will be going into the season as their starting quarterback. But do you, before we even talk about the dynasty, the draft capital, do you think Will Levis plays in 2023?
So I don't think Ryan Tannehill is that bad. Like, I feel like he was dealt a pretty crap hand last year, and like I don't think Tannehill's like a superstar, but I also think he's above replacement level as a quarterback, and I think Titans fans are ready to move on to, or the Titans in general are ready to move on to the next era of Titans football, and that might have to wait a year because Derrick Henry's still on this team and he's making a lot of money. So I think they might run it one more year, but I don't know. I could see Levis starting if Tannehill's playing poorly. I don't think Vrabel is one to, you know, sit and wait, and like, as much as loyalty is probably a part of his brand, I don't think he's going to be so loyal where he will stick with Tannehill, even though Levis could be the better option to win games and could be the future of the franchise. So I think he could start some games. And I mean, if they are bad, then he'll absolutely start some games.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that Ryan Tannehill is already approaching 35 years old. Like,
Yeah.
you almost forget how old this player is at this point. And I mean, last year he dealt with some injuries. Wasn't a great year. I mean, 2021 was a decline from what he had been when he sort of found new life in Tennessee. So there's a lot of question marks with Tannehill. I think he's, he made his thoughts on the Malik Willis pick very clear last year. And so
Yeah.
now it's like dialed up to the next degree here with Levis. So we'll see how it plays out. I think he'll get some time in 2023. Yeah. I feel like it's going to happen. Whether that's Tannehill is struggling and they just give him the keys, or if there's more injuries, I think one way or another, he's going to get on the field and we're going to get to see what he looks like, because that's as much of a question mark as anything. I mean, the spot is a little bit interesting, obviously, with the quarterback situation there, but just as a player, man, I mean, we both think there's a lot of development that needs to happen with this player. He's not even close to number 3 for me. This is a completely different discussion. That being said, in one quarterbacks, personally, I'm not taking him until the 4th round. That might be harsh, but I have him currently slotted as a 4th round player on my board. In Superflex, though, I do think late 1st, top of the 2nd.
Yeah, I have him 10th in Superflex, so right at the bottom of that 1st round. I have him mid 3rd in one quarterback leagues, and that's just because he's going to start. I think that the Titans view him as their guy. I don't know for sure since they waited till the 2nd to take him, but it feels that way. And like now we're getting the reports that, oh, this team was in on him. This team was in on him. Colts would have taken him at 4 if someone else took Richardson. Like all of these reports start to come out, which I don't know if any of them are actually true, but it seems like he is the type of guy. He's an NFL guy, where teams love him and he earns the trust of the franchise.
Don't do this.
It's true.
You're drinking the Kool-Aid.
I'm not. No. This is not my opinion. This is what I think the NFL feels about him. And I think that the NFL is going to fall in love with Will Levis and, his country strength and his quirky mannerisms. And
well, I mean, they already did, right? They already drafted this guy at the top of the 2nd.
They drafted him at the top of the 2nd, though. That's where the question marks come in.
Right.
Because he was talked about as a top 10 pick in the pre-draft process. So the 2nd round is a huge fall for him. And you mentioned that.
Yeah.
So, but I think that he's going to be the starter of the Titans come 2024. And if you get a guy with upside, with a big arm, with a potentially improving young offense, Tyjae Spears, Traylon Burks, Chig, Cal Phillips, question mark, like a team that has room to grow, Skoronski, like they're going in the right direction where they're getting all this old money off the books. So if Levis hits, I feel like he's worth at least a flyer in the 3rd. So, yeah. I
mean, that's true. Like, if you took him in the 3rd, I wouldn't blame you. I mean, I feel like where he's going to be in terms of like consensus. It's just like, I've said this on a previous pod. I'm going to follow my evaluation and the talent so much more than, hey, here's an NFL starting quarterback. Like you said, he will start for the Titans. Like they drafted him to be their starter. He will start NFL games. Absolutely. It's going to happen. This isn't Malik Willis. This isn't your 3rd round dart throw guy. Like they drafted him to be the starter for this team moving forward. That being said, I don't like him as a prospect. I don't trust his talent. And there's a lot of names in this class that I like in the 3rd round that I'm going to push him into the 4th round for.
Yeah. I totally understand. And like I said, the only reason is like, there's some upside there. There's a little bit of like, he can run a little bit, but it won't be me taking him in the 3rd. I'll tell you that.
Can we go full circle back to when he was Josh Allen? Have we gotten back there yet?
No, we'll talk about Josh Allen later.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on.
I think our boards are going to be the same.
I'm envisioning that's going to be true. I figured it was going to be true. The running backs, wide receivers, it's going to get weird. Quarterback this year, very fun, but I think also now very chalky. And number 3, Collin, why don't you give me your number 3 and let's see if we're right here.
CJ Stroud.
Yep.
Yeah. So unless you have 6-point passing touchdown and superflex, which some people do, I think you're a psycho if you do. But if you do, then I could see an argument for Stroud as QB2. But I got him as my QB3. I have him at right around 5 in my superflex rankings. It's behind my 2 other quarterbacks, Bijan and Gibbs. So that slots him in at 5. He went to the Texans, which I don't love the landing spot. I mean, we talked about this quite a few times because they don't have a lot of talent, man. Like, they just aren't a very good team right now. And we don't know much about the front office. We don't know much about the coaching staff. So there's a lot of unknown surrounding Stroud and what the future of this franchise looks like. So I understand if you're hesitant about taking Stroud, but he's really good. He's really good, man. So if he's as good as we think he is, he can elevate this team and be worth. I mean, you'll get a steal at 5 in superflex. I have him at let's see, CJ Stroud, mid to late second in 1 QB.
Yeah. Stroud, I mean, so I've mentioned this on a previous podcast. It's been a long time since our quarterbacks rankings 2.0 when we touched on that. And CJ Stroud ended as my quarterback 1 in the class. So talent, NFL wise, this was my number 1 player, number 1 quarterback in this class. The reason he's my number 3 fantasy wise is because of a couple of things. Number 1 is one thing that you just said, which is that the spot is interesting. I don't care so much about it when he's a top 2 pick. Like, this is their guy. They're going to build around him. We've seen this go both ways, but you just have to be optimistic and hope that they can surround him with talent. I mean,
you have to be optimistic with him, but you don't have to be optimistic with.
Well, I mean, one of them was my number 1 quarterback in the class.
One of them you like.
Yeah, it's like, if it's my number 1 player, I'm going to be like, yeah, sure. I trust the talent a lot. But I mean, hey, the number 1 thing with CJ, the number 1 concern that I have, and a lot of people have as well, how he handles pressure, because we've seen it break quarterbacks in the past. And it was a concern this season, 2022 tape, dealing with pressure. He's not there yet. And a lot of people kind of talk about his athleticism and his ability to create and escape the pocket. Those are sort of, one and the same. I mean, he needs to have that sort of potential to his game to get out of messy situations, but it's also just the fact of, if he has guys coming at him, can he stay composed? Can he do what he does? Operate from the pocket with, just absolute precision when he has guys in his face. So that's what we're going to find out. And we're definitely going to find out this year, because the Texans offensive line is not great. They have Laramie Tunzel, which is good, but as a whole, 28th ranked pass blocking by PFF last season. You don't love to see it. Now, there is some young guys that are coming in, and there is also the addition of Shaq Mason, who they made a trade for. So you get Shaq Mason at left guard. They draft Drew Scruggs in the 2nd round to be their starting center. But if you, great name, but according to my guy, Dane Brugler, because I'm not the one watching centers in the class, 5th or 6th round grade on Drew Scruggs. They took him at the bottom of the 2nd. So we'll see who's right. But usually it's somehow it's never the NFL team. It's always the media guy. So we'll see there. But and then Kenyon Green, who was their first round pick last year, hope to see some development out of him. And, maybe there'll be some growth there. But again, it's not a situation that is necessarily great for a player like this, especially. I mean, you look at the receivers, the talent there is questionable. I mean, there's some guys there that you might like. Like, I like Nico Collins. I like them drafting CJ's guy, Tank Dell, in the third round.
Yeah.
I like that. John Mechie's coming back, but we don't know. None of these things are things that we can be certain about. So I'm very excited to see him play, and I'm still taking him in the middle of the second in one quarterbacks. And I should point out also that this is assuming 6-point touchdown scoring in one quarterback. If you're playing with a little bit of a premium, that's what I'm looking at here, because I think we've all arrived at a point where you're either doing that or you're playing superflex. So middle of the second, or I'm comfortable taking him fourth in superflex. I will take him over all of the guys not named Bijan, and then my top two players.
Okay. I respect that. And yeah, I think that he's interchangeable in that the 4 or 5 spot. I mean, I think that comes down to what is your team looking for? Honestly, if you need a quarterback, then you have a starting quarterback waiting for you. So don't pass on him just because, your board may say something else. So they say don't draft for need, but in this case, it's pretty close. So I'd say that you can flip the coin and make the decision based on need in this situation.
Science, a very scientific process.
I last year when I had the 101 in our league, I almost literally flipped a coin to make the decision between Bouressa and Treylon Burks.
But you made the right decision.
Yeah,
you got the multi-year extension for Camp Dynasty because of that great drafting decision making.
Yes, I drafted Bouressa and then traded down. Everybody loves the trade down.
The killer move, man.
Yeah,
killer move.
Yeah, CJ Stroud, I'm rooting for him to be really good. That's what I want, because I feel like there's a lot of narrative swirling around about him, and I think he's good, and I want him to be him in like Fields to break this Ohio State narrative that there is. And I mean, it's a just narrative. Like there's hasn't been a good quarterback at Ohio State, but these guys, if anybody, seem like they're gonna break the curse. That's so. Yeah, go get CJ Stroud.
I will say this before we move on about that whole narrative, the Ohio State quarterback narrative. I've watched all these guys. CJ Stroud is the best passer to come out of Ohio State.
I agree.
It's a thing. Justin Fields, you might argue he was a better prospect, better tools, obviously better athlete, but as a passer, he wasn't like this. And the guys who came before weren't even close. So we'll see. Number two.
Number 2. Yes.
I think we're going to be aligned here. And I think we're going to both say Bryce Young. Am I right?
I think you're right.
So Bryce Young, obviously the number 1 overall selection in the NFL draft. The Panthers do, in fact, make the trade up from 9 to select Bryce Young. So all of the many, 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 many months of talking about his size, and then CJ was going 1, and then Will Levis was going 1, and then everything was, it was Bryce Young all along. So why is he number 2 and not number 1? Well, there's a few reasons for that, but I'll start by saying, Colin, that I think, like CJ Stroud, Bryce Young is not a foolproof player. And I think some people have sort of boxed him into that. Like, I think it was like by the time we got to the draft, it was like, this is the number 1 pick. And it's no doubt about it. Like he's head and shoulders above the rest. And some people actually do, they did grade it out that way. that he was head and shoulders above Stroud and the other quarterbacks. I didn't see it that way, and I also don't see him as a foolproof player. He's not one of my top graded quarterbacks ever. He's graded very highly, but he's graded right alongside of these other two guys that I have in this tier. And I think the size matters to me. It doesn't matter in the sense that I am like knocking him like around. It matters in the sense that I am going to put him in the mid-second along with CJ Stroud in a one quarterback league. I'm not going to overdraft him because he was the number one player in the class. I'm not going to, I do think the size has some merit to it. We just have never seen a quarterback of this size, of this stature at the NFL level. And I don't think we should just be so quick to say it's totally fine. He's going to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, the size concerns me a lot, man. That's the number one thing that I see when I see Bryce Young. It's like you can see the talent. The throws can be nuts, and the pocket awareness and he has a good stature in the pocket too, but I mean, the hits accumulate, man. Like, no matter how good you are, no matter how elusive you are, unless you're taking the like Tom Brady school of not taking a lick, it's going to be tough because you need some meat on your bones to play against these guys in the NFL. Like, these are the freakiest athletes, if I could speak.
There it is.
In the world. 250 pounds flying at you with 4.3 speed, and they're not looking to be your friend. So the size is concerning, but I like the spot a lot. Like, I like the Panthers a lot. I think they're building this young core really well. They've been building this up for a while now, where they kind of turned over from the Cam era and it was disappointing, but now it feels like they have a young core on defense, and then they can build their young core up on offense. And they're starting, and they got Mingo and they got Bryce, and they get off of that Christian McCaffrey contract with the trade, so they have a little more room to operate, and they get Miles Sanders in the building. So I like Bryce Young quite a bit. I have him at 3 in my superflex rankings. I have him towards the top of the second round in one quarterback. I mean, you could go mid-second, like you said. That'd be fine with me too. But yeah, I like Bryce. Bryce, I guess I shouldn't say I'm rooting for all these guys, because it'd be, I shouldn't come on here and be like, I hate this player. I don't want them to succeed.
I get it. I mean, and see, that's the thing. Like, you got to talk about the size just because, that is the big drawback here. I mean, but the player is really, really good. I like, you like everything you see. You just want him to be bigger. And I'm going to keep him here. I'm going to keep him at number 3 in Superflex. I'm going to keep him, right alongside CJ in a one quarterback, because I think the Panthers trust him. The Panthers make that decision. Like, we aren't worried about this. We know we're going to protect this guy. We're going to help this guy. We're going to scheme it for him to not hopefully take so much damage. The rushing, that was one of the things where it's like, yeah, he's got a little bit more quick twitch. He's a little more creative. Maybe you get some rushing potential. It's just not going to happen in the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to get shut down. I mean, you might get a little bit, but this is not a player that can, survive as a scrambler and, diving for the pylons and shit. Like, he's not going to be able to do stuff like that. So in that sense, I
was going to mention, like, you look at the best rushing quarterback in football in Lamar Jackson, and he has worn down. and he doesn't take hits, and he's a lot bigger than Bryce Young. So you think about that, the play style in, even if you're getting down 90% of the time, getting out of bounds 90% of the time, though that 10% adds up. So as much as you hope that, Bryce he's different, he doesn't take the big hit. He's smart, but if you watch him, he doesn't avoid hits, man. He's fighting for the extra yards. He's tough, and that's cool, but it doesn't benefit you long term.
Yeah, exactly. So I see this more as this is just, he's going to be the passer that he is in the NFL. And that's good enough. The reason I have him ahead of Stroud, who is my quarterback one in the class, is simply because it's almost like a tiebreaker. The situation. I think he's set up very, very well already. I mean, it's not a great team in Carolina, but it's a team that can legitimately compete for the division this year. There's an O-line in front of him that is more than serviceable. They have the new head coach with Frank Reich. They have Jonathan Mingo, like you said. They brought in some other weapons as well.
Harris.
Well, then they got my boy Terrace. Hey, do you happen to catch that little nugget this morning on The Athletic that Terrace Marshall led all wide receivers over the last 12 weeks of the season in yards per catch? So
I see you were looking at porn this morning. getting a little dirty this morning.
You know it, man. So the Marshall Mingo connection will be real. And then, I mean, there's a running game infrastructure there. They bring in Miles Sanders, pay him a lot of money. They're going to run the ball. They're going to help Bryce out there as well. So I like what they're doing already. I like where this team was. Remember, this was a team that controlled the number 9 pick. They made the move up. This wasn't a number 1 overall roster. So yeah, I mean, it's basically a tiebreaker for me on that because I see them as very similar prospects.
Yeah, I think that they've made you can tell they're making a concerted effort to improve the offense, because the offense was okay last year, but it was obviously missing a quarterback. They were starting, yeah. I mean, PJ Walker and
Sam Darnold, your guy.
Sam, my guy that I was just really pining for earlier this episode. But yeah, now they're moving into this new phase, and they got their guy, and they paid the premium price, and they did get rid of their number 1 weapon for so long in DJ Moore. So that sets back the skill group a little bit, but I think it's for the better because you also get Bryce Young out of it.
Right. Well, let's talk about number 1. We all know what name hasn't been said yet. And Collin, I'm going to let you take this one away because you've been on this train for a very, very long time.
I have been on this train for a very, very long time. The Anthony Richardson train. So this started as almost a throw-in. Richardson was a kind of a throw-in to our pre-season quarterback
all the way back
rankings.
To summer, man. I forgot about it.
And we were talking about this guy that showed some flashes, and we saw him in spring ball, and it was like, man, this is a fun looking prospect. Like, if he comes out, this is going to be an electric process. And we watched him week in and week out. We watched him struggle. We watched him succeed. We watched him throw for 400 yards. We watched him run for 140 and 3 touchdowns. And it was a wonderful year. I'll just say that. And now Anthony Richardson has climbed all the way up to number 2 in my superflex rankings. He is number 9 in my 1 quarterback rankings. And I mean, it's just been special seeing this player grow into the number 4 overall pick by the Colts. And we talked about the Shane Steichen of it all and what this looks like as a developmental process, because it's going to be a developmental process. He's not a polished prospect, and that's going to be said all over the place. I think he's a lot more polished than people say he is. I think he's incredible in the pocket. I think the only thing that he has questions about is his accuracy, which is valid and which is problematic as an NFL quarterback. I mean, you got to be accurate with the football. So the idea of pairing him with the engineer of the Jalen Hurts offense, though, that made him one of the best quarterbacks in football after having him look concerning at best in his first couple of years, Jalen Hurts, that is. It's really nice. This is the best pairing out of any of the quarterback landing spots, and it's going to be pretty nice. I mean, he has Michael Pittman on the outside. They drafted Downs, who is a Camp Dynasty favorite, to go in the slot. They have Alec Pierce to be on that opposite side. I mean, they got Jelani Woods, Mo Alley Cox, which is a nice tight end duo, and they got JT in that backfield with them. So this is going to be appointment television once Anthony Richardson is on the football field.
So when is Anthony Richardson on the football field?
Sooner than later, I hope, because I don't, as a football fan, because having him sitting on the bench while Gardner Minshew is out there is not going to be that fun. But I hope they let him marinate, because he deserves that at least, because, like I said, it's going to be a developmental process. So I want, as impatient as I am, as excited as I am to see him play, just give him some time. And unless he's wowing you in camp, which is very possible, but I've been reading the Colts beat because, you gotta read up on the Richardson, and apparently it's been very hit and miss. So, yeah. Which is to be expected, which is what we've been talking about. So give him some time, preheat the oven, let it cook. Just wait. Don't get impatient. Don't say we got to get our guy out there. I know Jim Irsay is kind of a psycho. I know this is all, but
hey, Andrew Luck is coming back apparently. Did you see that one?
Right. Yeah. Andrew Luck.
Just don't tamper with him. If he comes back, don't tamper with him.
God, that's such a stupid thing.
what a weird guy, man. But
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on record many times over the course of the last 7 or whatever months saying Anthony Richardson should not play as a rookie in the NFL. He should have a full year of development. I still believe that. I also don't think it's going to happen. So we will get to see this player this year. Gardner Minshew is not going to start 17 games for the Indianapolis Colts in a year where they drafted this guy at number 4 overall. It's just not going to happen. So
I'm so happy this wasn't Will Levis. We were like cheering on draft day because it was Richardson.
Yeah. And we were cheering not only because it wasn't Levis, but because of what you said just before, which is that this is the perfect spot. We've said that in the past. The Colts and Richardson make so much sense together. It's such a good spot. The writing seemed to be almost on the wall with the Shane Steichen hire, just because you could see the path there of, hey, we want to take this guy. We need somebody who knows how to work with a player like this. And I mean, and even saying that, I mean, Jalen Hurts has developed into one of the best quarterbacks in the entire NFL. And Anthony Richardson has better tools than Jalen Hurts.
I agree.
You're talking about a player here that has a ceiling literally to be the best quarterback in football.
Yeah, and that's not only because he is the most athletic, if we're talking straight testing, the most athletic quarterback ever, but also because of the throws that he can make on and off platform. It is ridiculous. And I think that the common knock on him is that he has, as a blanket statement, he has to work on accuracy, which is true. But it's also like he has trouble with intermediate throwing, which I don't think is true. I think people see him as like, he can throw the bomb, he can throw the pretty ball, but he has to work on everything else. And I think that there are plenty of instances where you can see him layering a ball in between like a corner and a safety in a zone, or you can see him dropping it over a linebacker before the safety can get there. Like, I think there are so many instances of nuanced quarterbacking that people are not giving him credit for. And I just don't like that very much.
I mean, there definitely are those moments on like that. Those flashes are what led me and a lot of other folks, including, the Indianapolis Colts, to say, yeah, this is a legit talent here. This isn't just, the freakiest athlete ever to play quarterback with a rocket arm, like that. He's not just that. He's more than that, which is how he ends up here. It's how he ends up as my number one quarterback in the class in terms of fantasy, because I do think that there is a lot there that you can like already. Now, when I say he has the tools to be the best quarterback in football, the path there is very far. It's not, like, I see this player as developing into a top 8 quarterback. Like, that's kind of like the middle ground where it's like, if he takes this developmental journey, if he works on his mechanics, which then funnel into improved accuracy, and he starts to play the quarterback position a little bit cleaner than he does now in terms of decision making and reading the field, I think he easily moves into the top group of quarterbacks in the NFL. It's just that if it's lightning in a bottle, man, and he can find all of it, if everything can become unlocked, and you're talking about a player that by year 4, suddenly this might be the best player in the league. So that's the upside. That's why we take a player like this here, but it's also not a do or die. It's not like he's either the best quarterback in the league or he's a bust, there's a very wide middle ground there where I feel comfortable projecting him to the point where I am spending 2 in a superflex league on him, and I'm not worried about it at all. I'm very comfortable with that decision. And in one quarterback, like you said, I have him at the end of the first round, currently 11th on my board.
Yeah. The rushing upside, man. Like, you saw, we've mentioned this also, that like the Justin Fields thing, where he was throwing, probably averaging 190 yards a game, and was the QB4 or something like that. He was the QB1 with weeks that he is throwing for 200 yards, and Richardson could easily do that. And I think the thing that he also has is immense red zone upside. That is the thing that you see in the Florida film, is him in the red zone is disgusting. And Shane Steichen, Jalen Hurts in the red zone, they're gonna bring the double cheek sneak over, and that's gonna bring them some extra touchdowns. So, man, this is gonna be electric. You're gonna feel pretty good, I think, if you take him at 2.
Yeah, I will end with the quote that I've raised before from Dane Brugler, who says, "It is not a low floor player. It is a high floor player, because in today's NFL, this rushing ability at the quarterback position is coveted. It's not just an accessory anymore. This is a featured piece of the position. There are ways to scheme this ability into situations like Justin Fields last year, where you can develop as a passer while still maximizing your strengths as a rusher, and that turns into production, which turns into fantasy stats." So I love it, man. Anthony Richardson, fantasy QB 101 here at Camp Dynasty, unanimously.
Absolutely. Oh, makes me happy.
That is the top 5 quarterbacks in the class. Very fun quarterback group. I mean, obviously, if you were following along with the draft, the NFL draft, you heard lots and lots and lots and lots of opinions on these quarterbacks. I mean, it was that sort of class. These guys are great prospects in this top tier. They all went in the top 4 picks, and we're going to see how it turns out in terms of the NFL and in fantasy. I mean, I got to ask you this just because it's the quarterbacks episode. And if you're playing Superflex, you're probably looking for one of these types of players. Any deep sleepers from this class that you have your eye on that you're adding as a flyer?
DTR is my favorite one. Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He's on the Browns. And I mean, if there's anything we know, it's that there's Deshaun Watson is questionable as a player at best. We don't there's a lot of question marks around him. He's been suspended. He's been injured. It's not only the suspension and the issues there. He's had 2 ACL tears.
He also had his worst statistical season as a pro by far last year.
Yes. And so there is some upside in having an athletic quarterback as his backup that, I mean, if he continues to play poorly or if he gets hurt or if there's another issue with him off the field, you have a starting quarterback with rushing upside.
Yeah, I agree. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is one that I would bring up. I mean, he's got a long way to go as a passer. Yeah. I mean, but he has that. You watch a lot of Zach Charbonnet, you end up watching a lot of DTR, catch a lot of Bruins games on Pac-12 After Dark. I like the player a lot. The demeanor, the intensity that he plays with, getting out in front of Zach as a lead blocker multiple times this season. I mean, that's the kind of player this guy is, and it's easy to root for him. And the situation, like you just outlined there, is interesting. There is a somewhat of a path there where, yeah, I might just kind of, if I got a free spot, just see how it goes, see what happens.
If you're in a deep league, you would throw him on the roster.
Right. Outside of that, I mean, I'm not super thrilled with any of these guys. I mean, I still like Jaron Hall is an interesting player to me. I don't know, what that means. I don't really see him as an NFL starter at any point, but see him more as a backup. But I do like the talent there in that sort of role. The only other one that I would bring up is Jake Haener, who same deal, same as Jaron Hall. I see them very similarly. Good backups. Don't see either of them starting, but players that one injury away, man, one injury away, these guys will be they'll be there. So, but that's it's just that it's not a.
Those are darts.
Yeah.
And they're darts thrown with a blindfold after you've been spun around 4 times.
Yeah.
It's like, if you hit on one of those, it's like free money. It's like winning $1 million on a scratch off.
Hey, somebody's got to be the next Brock Purdy, right? That happens every year. And Brock Purdy's definitely really good and not just, a guy, right?
Well, Brock Purdy had a really high S2 score.
Right. So did we get the S2s on the quarterbacks? I'd like to draft whatever one scored. The highest was Bryce Young, I'm pretty sure. So
yeah, that's why he went number 1.
So there it is. We've solved it.
That's the next Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
Bryce Young.
Just from number 1 to the Mr. Irrelevant, it all lines up,
Exactly.
All right, man. Well,
Brock Purdy sucks, by the way.
Yes.
I just put that out there.
Camp Dynasty is anti-Purdy. We need to make that known to the world.
I said before that I don't want to prey on any player's downfall. Well,
it's just it always is a product of something. You never just dislike a guy on his own basis. Like, I might like Brock Purdy in a different world where we aren't force-fed the narrative that he is a great NFL player and that he is an emerging star in the future for the 49ers. Like, if we weren't fed all of that, I probably wouldn't care. But
Trey Lance must be horrible.
I mean, come on, man. Like,
Trey Lance must be bad.
Sad.
Because there's no way that they're talking about Brock Purdy coming off of Tommy John's. Apparently a botched Tommy John's.
Yeah.
And Trey Lance is still like on the block.
Yeah.
After Yikes. They just traded like 9 firsts to take him number 3 overall.
Yep.
Should have just taken Fields, man.
Yeah. God, what a draft
teams,
that was. Too.
All these teams passing on Fields are gonna regret it.
Draft that.
Bryce Young better be better than Justin Fields, or J.C. Horn has to be the man.
Hey,
he's good.
JC,
he's good.
Man.
He's good.
All right. Well, let's get out of here. Enough about quarterbacks. That's your little spotlight in the Camp Dynasty community. But we are moving on to a premium position here.
Oh, yeah.
And a position that we have talked at length about, and one that has gotten incredibly shaken up? Question mark. We're going to find out.
Find out next time on Camp Dynasty.
So if you want to prep, go back, listen to Running Back Rankings 2.0, find out where we started this thing back in the winter, but we are going to be doing final running back rankings next week, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And right now I'm thinking 10. I might expand that by the time we get there. We'll see.
Yeah, top 30 running backs coming next week.
So until then, though, follow us at camp_dynasty on Twitter and camp.dynasty on TikTok. Also, check out our YouTube channel, which is also just Camp Dynasty. That's another one that you can check out. It's a little dormant, but things
podcasts are going up.
They're coming. So some video feed coming there from the podcast. So check that out. Subscribe there. And as always, comment, like, subscribe, turn notifications on, whatever you do for podcasts these days. We appreciate it. Stay plugged in. You do not want to miss the final stretch of the 2023 season. But I will say, before we sign it off, Colin, I did make my 2024 watch list this weekend. So
yeah,
I'm doing a little bit of
sneak peek.
I'm doing a little bit of blending right now. We're getting pumped up.
We are. We've been, we said we wouldn't move on too quickly. And then like the next week, we're like, man, this class is pretty good.
Oh, man. Yeah. This is going to be better than this year. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. And then
have you heard that before?
After we finish the 2024 class, it'll be like, man, 2025.
2025. Hey.